Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to call the meeting of the Bridges and Tunnels Committee to order. Are there any public speakers?
One has to be flexible when one comes to these meetings, because as new information comes into you, you need to make new decisions. Between the time when I got here this morning, about 7:30, and now, I got new information, some of which is about this committee, and it's positive information. They're working, they're listening. I can communicate with your staff in various places, and it's good. Yesterday I was at the New Jersey Turnpike, and they're having great difficulties. As New Jersey Transit, I was there too. The Port Authority is Port Authority. At any rate, you have the opportunity to move forward in transportation in this area to make it more convenient for the drivers who use your facilities. Governor Cuomo has said, I want the correct kind of open road tolling, and you're moving in that direction. I wind up here saying thank you for having a good staff, thank you for listening, and thank you for moving New York State forward in the way that it needs to be for this century. Thank you.
No changes to the work plan. I think we.
Comments on the minutes? Do I have a motion?
No.
Do I have a motion to accept the minutes? Second? Favor? All those in favor? Aye. Done. Do we have a quorum?
I believe with two you do. I'm not.
I think we do.
I think you do.
Report on operations and safety.
Good afternoon. The report on operations begins on page 18. Traffic was higher in August with 27.6 million crossings as compared with 27.2 million crossings in August of 2015. This represents a 1.5% increase. Gas prices averaged $2.22 per gallon, 46 cents less than the same period last year. Rainfall amounts of 1.1 inches over 10 days occurred during August of 2016 versus 1.9 inches over 4 days in August of 2015. Easy Pass volume increased by 3.1% in August of 16 as compared to August of 15, while crossings using cash and other payment methods declined by 6.3% for the month. Passenger car travel was up 1.3%, and other vehicle travel was up 4.4% from August of 2015. Preliminary monthly traffic figures for September of 2016 are 3.4% more than the same period in 2015, and as stated at last month's committee meeting, Labor Day traffic for the holiday weekend was down 2.4% versus 2015 Labor Day weekend as a result of the possibility of Tropical Storm Hermine hitting the region. If there are no questions, this ends the report on operations.
The safety report.
Good morning. The report on safety for the month of August is illustrated on page 32, in which we continue to highlight our leading and lagging indicators as shown on the top and bottom tables. The report includes 12-month rolling averages and highlights the following performance indicators: customer collisions with injuries, employee accident reports, employee lost time injuries, and lastly, contractor lost time injuries. The customer collision rate for this 12-month reporting period increased from 5.74 to 6.89, and the rate for injury collisions increased slightly from 0.91 to 1.02 injuries per million vehicle crossings. During the same reporting period, the total number of reported employee accidents increased by a number of 3 accidents from 258 to 261 total cases, and the rate for the lost time injuries increased from 5.2 to 6.5. Finally, the contractor lost time injury rate dropped from 2.90 to 1.81, representing a decrease of 37.6%. In terms of our leading indicators shown on the bottom table, we continue to meet our set goals. Unless there are questions or comments, that concludes my report on safety.
Mr. Chair, this is my first time in the Bridges and Tunnels Committee ever since I was appointed in June, since I was out most of the summer, and I was a scofflaw last month, so I apologize. So this comes from an ignorance, and I'll be learning. Those are some pretty dramatic, but I'm going to play the same role I play on Metro North and Long Island Railroad, which is I consider myself first and foremost focused on safety. Those are some pretty staggering increases in accident rates, just reading it for the first time. 20%, 12%, 25%, if I'm reading the right.
You're talking about customer collisions? And
I'm talking about the 20, the 12, and the 25, which are double digits, obviously, and large. And looking at your leading indicators, it doesn't lead me to believe there was some reason, because your workforce deployment wasn't 20% higher. So what's going on? Because that's kind of
well,
startling.
if we look at our accidents, employee accidents, if we take that, the number is on a trend upward. It's been like that for the last several months, I could say. But if we look at the accidents themselves, we could say that for the most part they're low-level accidents, soft type of tissues, trips and falls on busy plazas. Over 70% of our accidents are on a plaza by our officers. Mostly, again, trip and slip in a busy plaza. We try to intensify our discussions with them, roll calls, and constantly enforce the safety, require them to enforce the safety, plaza safety rules that we have in place. But there's some work to be done ahead of us.
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure that answers the question, because it's not like these toll plazas were just created last week. I mean, this has been around since the era of Mr. Moses. So what would drive a 20% increase in customer collisions and a 25% increase in lost time injuries? What's going on?
Partially also...
Pat,
yeah.
The collisions are mainly driver inattention. Traffic has increased dramatically this year, and none of these collisions are really major collisions. They're side swipes, rear ends. We attribute most of them to driver inattention. We actually analyze the accidents are reported each day for a 24-hour period, and we gather that information monthly, and then we put together a quarterly meeting or every 6 months. And if there is any adjustment to be made to the facility roadways or signage or whatever, we attack that. But basically, if we see a spot where there's a concentrated, like a high priority area, we would immediately look at that. But as of right now, most of these are driver error.
With all due respect, sir, page 19, the first sentence says traffic went up from 27.2 crossings to 27.6 crossings. That's 2%. So we had a 2% increase in traffic, but a 20% increase in collisions. So that's not a parity. If you said traffic increased 20% and collisions are up by 20%, I'd be like, oh, okay. But it's
this is a 12-month average. This is the safety number. This is a 12-month average. But your point is well taken.
I know, but is something going on?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously these things are creating a huge distraction, but I didn't think it was 20% in the last year. Texting has been a problem for the last several years. And again, I'm sorry, I'm new to this committee, so I apologize for pressing this issue, but these are dramatic differences from the year before.
We can break it down further. We can report back to you. We'll look at it more in depth and give you the reasons that we may be seeing, why it's increasing, and we'll report back.
Yeah, I think we need to look at it month to month too, and I think that will help illustrate. There was something specific on a particular month. I think that might help illustrate.
Can I jump in for a minute and ask this? First, let me make the point. It's a minor accident when it happens to someone else. When it happens to me, it's a catastrophe. All right? Okay. So,
You have a nice
that
car.
said, you said that much of it occurs in and around the plaza, where either the lanes expand or they contract, correct? To what extent, if any, would you be helped in reducing these if instead of the broken white lines that lead to the toll and hopefully will see the end of that with OTP. Would you be helped by having specific solid lines taking it in so that people get the message you can't cross the line?
We do have solid lines at most of the plazas and cones, delineation. People violate that. You know, they look for the shortest line. They'll cross over at will, and our enforcement takes action on that.
Well, let me ask you this. I have a strong aversion to the use of Orwellian cameras, which permeate this agency. But how about if we put some cameras in the plazas and haul in the people who decide they're playing cowboy at the rodeo?
We do give summonses when justified. We do that.
There gotta be a way, guys.
Listen, as a user of the bridge, a lot, Throgsneck specifically, obviously when you're coming from the Bronx, okay,
We're only good drivers.
I understand that, but I'm coming from Westchester through the Bronx, but what ends up happening is, of course, where the two highways merge, okay, where the Bruckner and the, whatever they other call the Throgsneck Expressway merge, okay, you have an immediate shift of people because some people have to get from the left lane to the right lane, all the way to the right if they're paying cash, especially when they come in off the curve, okay? And everybody else is trying to find the shortest, easy pass route possible. And they don't care whether it's the one they're in or the one 5 to the left, which is where it normally is. That's where they're going, and they don't care who's in the way. And so you see, I mean, I see that all the time, and you see little, I mean, luckily I have not been involved in it, but you see other people who have been where things happen because people are trying to get through that. And then, of course, when you come out of the toll booths, and you have, in some cases, 12 lanes going into 3 lanes, you get that, you know, shift through of everybody trying to get through the same thing. That's one of the concerns I have. You know, at now, it's done after you stop. You know, one of the issues I was going to raise when we talk about open roll tolling is how many lanes are we going to have straight through? Because now people are not going to do it after a stop. They're just going to do it at 60 miles an hour in that regard. Because if they don't stop, which I know we're not going to make them stop anymore, and the gantry is going to read the license plate or the Easy Pass, they're going to go through as quickly as they can, and I'm concerned that from a safety standpoint, after the toll or after the gantry, eliminate the word toll, after the gantry, that it's going to be a free-for-all on the other side.
Yeah, well,
That's my concern.
We're reducing the amount of lanes coming through the plazas, you
Right.
know, appropriately to the amount of roads that are leading to and from the plaza. So we're not going to have that 3 lanes into 12 back into 3. We're going to more align it to
So
the
the
amount of
hope
roadways.
is that people just go straight
yeah.
and not have to go back and forth.
It's just going to be as if you're in the highway
Right.
and you're going under a sign gantry. It shouldn't be any different than that.
Okay, okay.
And that issue there that you were bringing up, that represents about 14% of the accidents at that facility in that region, so that's
Yeah.
something that...
Well, if you remember how we aligned the plazas to bring all the lanes together.
Right.
So there's less
And I
jockeying.
fully understand the issue
Yeah.
of keeping the cash on one side and the Easy Pass on the
Yeah.
other. I strongly support that, but it does lead to, you know, listen, we would all hope that people would make their decision as far away from the toll booth as possible. We all know they make it as close to the toll booth as possible. Human nature being human nature, that's where it happens, and then, oh, you know, I don't have an Easy Pass, or the guy in front of me, or the Easy Pass thing doesn't work,
Yeah.
and 3 people in front of them, and then notwithstanding the fact that it says don't change, they, you know, it is what it is. You know, it's people being people.
We will try to break down, you know,
Okay.
more specifically the type of accidents that we're seeing and the month to
And
month, and we'll
report
Okay.
back
give
on
a
that.
give a better
And one of the
trend.
things that we would just...
Take a fixed period of time. capable of being scrutinized, dealt with, and tell us how those accidents occur.
Well, we do have all that.
We
We're
do
just
every
gonna,
quarter.
we, yeah, we're gonna bring it to you
Right.
and break it down for you.
But some of the things we were discussing today is with all, we're doing a lot of big things on our properties right now.
Yes.
People are curious, and I look at accidents that are, as you come into the UL Cary Tunnel, and you can't figure why somebody just drove in. They're in two lanes right now, but meanwhile they ended up in a collision right near the portal in Manhattan. And then I noticed myself doing it as you go in. A lot of big work is being done. People are now looking at some of these things being done, and the next thing they know, there's a brake light in front of them, and it's too late. And you're getting, like Jim said, minor accidents, but yet they're an accident, delaying traffic.
Right.
To what extent does the work that is being done, particularly at the tunnels, impact on this?
Well, the customer doesn't see that. That's being done while the tunnel is, for the most part, being shut. So there's no customer in there while the construction is on.
If you go across the Whitestone Bridge heading from Queens to the Bronx, on your far right, you have either construction or somebody's found a new parking lot. All right? That has to have some sort of impact.
I think when you see driver attention, there's a lot of things that play into people's observations.
Just
There's a lot going on.
to add in, we look at the numbers and look at to see if there's more accidents in areas, prone areas. Really, there's no specific increase in areas of construction compared to others.
One is too many.
Right, I understand. We understand that.
Anything else? Okay.
Okay, Easy Pass report, I'll quickly go through that. Begins on page 33. Our market share was 85.1%. In August, that's up 1.3 percentage points from the previous year. Almost 27,500 accounts were opened in August, 47% of which were on-the-go accounts, and we're over 872,000, I believe, on-the-go tags sold in the lane since the program began several years ago. So if there's no questions on the Easy Pass report, I'll move on to the financial report.
The financial report for August begins on page 39. We are comparing results against the July mid-year plan. The first item is traffic. Jim just reported the traffic results were higher on a year-to-year basis, and it was up 1.5%. The year-to-date numbers against the mid-year forecast are also favorable. Traffic is up 0.6% through August, and the preliminary traffic numbers for September are also up 1.1%, or 0.3 million crossings. The next is toll revenue. Toll revenue through August was $1.246 billion, which is 0.3%, or $3.7 million better than planned. Our preliminary September revenue numbers continue on a positive trend as well, with revenue estimated to be about $1.9 million, or 1.2% against budget. Our report on expenses. The total expenses were $301.2 million through August, which is about $15.2 million, or 4.8% lower than planned. Breaking this down by labor and non-labor, our non-labor costs were 5.1% less than planned, or $6.9 million, due primarily to the timing of expenses. Our labor costs were lower as well by about $8.2 million, or 4.6%, primarily due to payroll vacancies. Our overtime is down 6.2% against plan, and that is about $1.1 million. Our support to mass transit was $777.4 million through August, which is about $34.6 million, or 4.7% better than planned. This concludes the financial report. Thank you.
I have one on page 41, under non-current liability, derivative and liability. What do you guys have? Always.
Yeah, over there.
It's it's from the finance, MTA Finance. They provide all the investing for us, and they hedge some of our investments. It comes directly from headquarters.
Good morning. The report on the capital program starts on page 53 of the book. There were 5 commitments made in September in the amount of $5.6 million. Year-to-date, 61 commitments have been made with a total value of $98.4 million. This represents approximately 65% of our annual commitment plan of $151.8 million. There was 1 project completion in September and 1 in August. The most notable completion was a miscellaneous structural repair contract at the RFK Bridge in the amount of $11.2 million. Year-to-date, there have been 8 project completions in the amount of $90.5 million, and this represents 62% of our annual completion plan of $146.4 million. There were 9 task closeouts in September for $49 million, and year-to-date, there have been 91 closeouts in the amount of $180 million. Unless there are any questions, that concludes the report.
Your paint schedule? How frequently do you paint the underside of and other portions of bridges?
The paint cycle is generally a full replacement of the entire paint system is done somewhere between 20 to 30 years, depending on the environmental conditions. And then in between, there are maintenance, overcoating cycles, touch-up cycles. So, at any given time, depending on the exposure conditions of the facility and the severity of the environment, it varies. But between the major paint cycles, there are maintenance painting cycles that you may observe from time to time.
Do you have a written protocol for it?
Yes, we do.
And that protocol says, we will do it every 3 years, 6 years, or what have you?
Yes.
And is it an effort to keep them as free of rust as I would like to see some other portions of the city free of rust?
It's the painting program particularly on our large bridges it's basically an ongoing, never-ending task. It's planning replacement and in between times doing maintenance and doing spot painting, and it's a continuous process, and you have to stay on top of it at all times.
Anything? All right.
Okay, we have 2 action items on our open road tolling initiative. Peg Terry, our general counsel, will walk us through them.
The 2 ORT action items appear in the book beginning on page 70. We're asking the committee to recommend that the board adopt 2 resolutions related to changing the method of toll collection to cashless, gantry-based open road tolling, or ORT, at 8 TVTA facilities, with the subsequent demolition of the existing toll booths and reconfiguration of the plazas and approach roadways. The first item concerns the environmental assessment and negative declaration that were distributed to commissioners over the weekend and contains a determination that the proposed change in the method of toll collection to ORT at these facilities will have no significant adverse environmental effects, adopts the negative declaration, and authorizes the president or his designee to execute it. The committee should vote on this resolution before considering the second one.
Questions?
So first of all, I think I would like to give kudos to the MTA staff and to the governor for being aggressive in pushing forward with ORT, in that it is obviously the right product for our customers. And so that is certainly something that should be recognized. That said, I think with this negative declaration and some other things that, well, the 2 actions here and actions that we'll see in the Finance Committee later today, I have some minor concerns around process and how this sort of transpired that I want to talk about, and then some more significant concerns about all of our understanding of the real complete financial impacts of ORT Insofar as process goes, I'm struggling a little bit with the fact that this sort of went from gubernatorial press conference to action in a very compressed period of time, and now we have this negative declaration that we would vote on, and then I presume if it were passed, vote on Friday as a full board, that presumes that that the subsequent declaration has already been passed, essentially. It's a lot to take in all at one time, and I do have a concern that to a degree it going straight from press conference to being asked for over $100 million in expenditure in a 3 or 4 week period almost raises the question of, are we a perfunctory board, or are we really a board of independent fiduciaries, and all the sort of concerns that would go with that. But that aside, I feel a little bit like, as a board, we're drinking from a fire hose here in these committee meetings today, in that there have been no other meetings preceding this sort of explaining that I've been a part of, at least, explaining the overall capital plan for what I understand will be hundreds of millions of dollars, $500 million, in order to put ORT in place, and layering onto that is that as far as enforcement goes, my understanding is we have authority to suspend registrations of New York registrations, but we have no agreements with other states for suspension of registration as of today. And our projections of lost revenue from evasion have been made off of the Henry Hudson Bridge, where we know something like 95% of the riders, first of all, there's no commercial traffic, most of those riders have Easy Pass, and most of them are on a New York plate. So it's not really representative of the type of loss we would anticipate seeing on the Verrazano or the RFK. And my understanding is we think these numbers could be quite significant. And to the extent they were, forget the capital costs. To Bridge and Tunnel's credit, it's the one area that's cash flow positive in this enterprise, and it would have all kinds of impacts on bond ratings and other things if we saw a loss in revenue from evasion that far out exceeded that which we expect. And at least to my knowledge at a board level, these conversations haven't really happened, yet here we are with the first $140 million of expenditure being asked to be approved here and later in finance. And boy, it's a lot to take in at one time. And I would also say to the governor's office, which I'm sure this will get back to, that if this is a good idea, which it is, and we all agree with, it certainly becomes incumbent on them to help us to get these multi-state agreements on registration suspension, because this falls apart without that. And so we will need that, clearly, and we will need help getting that. And so that message should be passed back up. That said, at the moment I have the luxury of not actually being a voting member of this committee, and so I raise the concern, but I will certainly raise it again today in Finance, where I am a voting committee member, and but I raise it as a concern because the full board will obviously have to vote on it.
Let me respond. I raised this issue approximately 3 to 4 years ago when we first started with Henry Hudson. I raised the issue in two contexts, as Jimmy Ferrara will tell you, and you may have even been there. I said, what is it that is going to compel people to pay, and aren't we going to have a premium on people just scooting right through? The media covered that. The issue was addressed at inordinate length, both at the board meetings and in sidebar discussions. And I was told at the time, you watch, within a period of time, we will actually collect more money from the penalties that are attached to the people who do not pay via Easy Pass at the bridge than we lose from the deadbeats who don't pay at all. That is what has happened. That's number one. Number two, it is not correct that at the Henry Hudson Bridge, which I travel by car 3 days a week, religiously, I annoy them about that regularly. All right? You have Connecticut plates. It is a direct feeder from Connecticut. You have Connecticut plates there. And I have not seen any data yet, but I suspect the data would show that those folks, when they get that letter, pay. Just as we pay, many of us, who go through these little red lights and pay the Department of Finance when they send us a picture of our driver's license and say, send me $50, please. Those numbers have changed. You will recall, Annie, I made exactly the point you've just made several years ago. The data proved Jimmy Ferrara correct when he said.
Speaking about is the Henry Hudson is all non-commercial.
And that's one of the issues. One of the issues that they say they're going to examine and why they need to get approval to get the process started is, do you in the first instance just have one side of the bridge for the non-commercial and another side for the commercial with Easy Pass, and how do you calibrate it? Those are issues that are going to be examined. But the last point I wanted to make is, and this is just a personal view, there's a distinction between this governor and other public officials. He acts, they talk. And that's why I admire him.
And, Mr. Chairman, I mean, I meant it with no disrespect. I genuinely mean I am appreciative of the fact that this initiative is almost certainly moving forward quicker because he acts. And I appreciate it. It's the right product for our customers, no question about it. And so I don't want to hold up the authority for moving forward what's with the right product. But I think it's fair to, along the way, ask the right questions and make sure we're getting the right information. That's my only point.
I would not disagree.
And I mean, no disrespect to you. I wasn't here in those times when you asked those questions, and I'm glad to hear that. That's a great answer to how it's played out.
One could actually argue that there is an environmental impact. It's better for the environment.
Indeed, just to make that point, that was an issue that likewise was raised. Because the question was, on the Henry Hudson, how many people will slip down from the Henry Hudson Parkway down to the public bridge at Broadway, thereby to avoid the toll? And at that time, the city people and the MTA people said, we've done some testing and we have found that when they take the bypass route, A, it takes them longer, they ultimately get frustrated as hell with it, and C, the pollution is greater.
I have been very supportive of this all through the years. Chuck is right. We've discussed this at length regarding the Henry Hudson on numerous occasions. I'm glad to see that the penalties are going up. I think the penalties should even be higher in that context.
But the penalties are going up selectively at some bridges and not at others. Why is that?
Related to the toll on the bridges, I believe.
Right, it's going up at the major crossings with the higher tolls. It's staying where it is at the Henry Hudson, which seems to be working, and the Rockaways actually have a lower toll.
I know, Chuck, you're talking about the data. Do you have that Henry Hudson data? Can we see it?
Have I seen it?
No, I'm asking Don.
Right.
I'm asking the head of MTA Bridges and Tunnels.
You're talking about the penalty data,
Yeah.
who pays the fee at?
Well, the data on fare evasion and what you're collecting.
Yes, we do have that.
Can we look at that now?
I can tell you what it is. I don't have it in front of me, but it's
I mean, I think that would be I think that would have been a useful thing to have handy to inform this discussion. I kind of want to echo my colleagues' comments. I certainly think this is the way we want to go, but I feel like there's less detail here in this proposal than we just got on a bus rerouting of 2 blocks. This is a pretty momentous set of decisions we're making here, including, I think, major implications on the capital plan that I have to say I don't understand. This is a $500 million project, and I know, Don, you sent us an email that sort of gave some quick explanation, but I feel like I'm craving a little more documentation on something that is, I think, a pretty massive rearranging of the capital plan. I'm not saying I'm against it, I'm just saying I don't feel like I have enough information here to really quite understand what we're doing.
Well, first on the Henry Hudson, about 70% of the tolls by mail customers pay the toll, and I believe, I don't remember how many of that percentage also pay the violation fee, but enough of those customers also pay the violation fee that were actually slightly over 100% in terms of the toll revenue from that facility. So it's, as Commissioner Merdler said, it's been a success at the Henry Hudson in terms of, from a revenue perspective, we're staying more than whole.
Does that include out-of-state plates?
Yes.
I think yes, it
Yes,
does.
it does.
Yes. And you also mentioned Connecticut, by the way. I think I haven't looked at it in a couple of months, but the last time I looked, we're actually getting a higher payment rate from Connecticut customers than we are New York and New Jersey customers, I believe. But I'll confirm that. In terms of the capital program, I understand your question. So, I mean, I can go through for the record, what the exchange, if you'd like. But I think the larger point...
I think we should certainly have it on the record in writing, so we understand what we're authorizing here.
That's fine, but the larger point to make on the capital program is that we will be doing a plan amendment like all the MTA agencies, and there'll be a plan amendment for the capital program coming later this year. I'm not sure, I believe in December, but I'm not sure. So in that plan amendment, you will see all of the ups and downs of the capital program.
But we're voting today, basically, to set that in motion. Right? Okay, but that next bite at the apple is kind of immaterial. I think once we vote affirmatively today, or at least when we have our board meeting on Friday, right, you guys will be going ahead.
Well, at certain facilities, not every facility.
Which will you be going ahead on then?
Well, the two tunnels are first.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be going ahead on those immediately.
Okay, so...
I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
I share some of the concerns raised by my fellow commissioners. We are being asked in the second resolution that we've not yet gotten to approve a motion or advance a motion for which we have very little information on with regards to capital costs. So we do understand, because staff has provided this and Mr. Sparrow has provided this, that, and the governor's made it clear in his presentation, that this is at a minimum a $500 million capital project, about $513 million. And then we are being asked to consider procurements totaling $141 million to advance open road tolling. And some of the costs for that package of procurements is associated with an expedited timeline and a shorter duration. So what that says is that in order to expedite and advance this project on this timeline, we are incurring additional costs in order to facilitate that expedited timeline for 9 shorter months. Now, I want to start or make it very clear that I have always been supportive of open road tolling. In fact, my 9 years in advocacy, I've been calling for this, and specifically calling on the MTA to advance this, and I applaud the governor for making this a priority. I think it's great. And I, over my 9 years, have lent my voice to the voice of those of other critics who have complained about the very slow pace for some of MTA's initiatives and projects. So it may seem a little unusual for me to highlight and point out my concern around the very expedited schedule for this project, again, because I do think it would be great to advance this soon. But I am concerned about the pace of this, particularly because we're being asked to vote on something in this committee, advance it to the full board, for which we don't know the full cost of. And speaking to our fiduciary responsibility, that is certainly troublesome. So my comments are not on the merit of the plan, on the project, but on the process, which my commissioner to the left raised also. And this expedited timeline that is incurring additional costs. Again, language from the book says expedited costs, or costs associated with an expedited schedule and a shorter duration of time.
Mr. Chairman, the point of process, you've got 3 different pieces here of action items. You've got a SECRA piece, you've got an approval piece for the overall move, and you have a violation enforcement. Before we get to the procurements, I wonder if we can actually go through these in sequence to to make some forward progress, since the one thing that all of you are saying is that you all love this idea and want to have it happen, with great respect and appreciation for the governor's leadership. So maybe we can get to the brass tacks of what the issues are as we get into the actual action items, because right now all we're at is the point of, please give us more data. And so maybe we can have a discussion about the secret declaration, which I suspect is, to Mr. Albert's point, actually relatively benign. And as we go down the path, we can get to the procurements piece, which I suspect is the center of the challenge. And that may let us make a little progress here in this conversation.
You have anything to add to that on the procurement piece? We
haven't started yet.
It's an environmental thing.
Allow me just to repeat, we ask that the committee vote on this resolution now before considering the second one on the method of toll collection.
I move it.
Second.
All those in favor?
I'm sorry to interrupt. We're talking the secret declaration,
Yes.
right? Okay,
This is a
thank you.
negative declaration resolution.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary-minded, abstention, done. All right, now, Neil, we should
Let's go in order.
All right, and let me introduce the second item. The second item is to approve the proposed change in the method of toll collection at the 8 facilities to ORT and delegate to the president the authority to take the necessary steps. We ask that you recommend the adoption of this resolution.
motion.
I move it.
Second? Second. All those in favor?
Wait, I thought now was when we were going to get the information. I mean, that
Now they
was...
should-
Point of information, Mr. Chairman. Does the capital cost for this include in any way the new lighting that will be on the bridges, or is that a totally separate item?
The lighting is actually being led by NYPA. So we are in the process of working with them to figure out how that will work in terms of payment, and over time we will likely pay them back. But it's not part of our capital program.
Have you estimated a cost for the lighting that the governor announced?
NYPA is in taking the lead on estimating those costs, and they're not finalized yet.
Thank you.
So I guess I'm going to go back to, is there any itemization of the potential cost for this item that you want us to vote on? That I think, as Veronica's saying, I didn't even know that it was $500 million, but it's $500 million? Is there any piece of paper that has any breakdown of the $500 million?
We can send you a piece of paper but
I mean, can't we have it now?
I don't have it for you to hand out right now, but...
Is it $500 million? I mean, is that true? Where did that number come from?
No, that came from us. It was also that came from us. And again, as I started to say before, this will all be detailed in the plan amendment, the capital plan amendment that we will put before the board, I believe in December. What we're trying to do now is get moving on ORT prior to that plan amendment. Okay,
State.
Well, it doesn't have to go to the state for us, actually. It does not go to CPRB for us.
I understand that you want to get moving, but I feel like this is a mighty big vote for which we basically have almost no details. $500 million is, even in New York City, a big sum of money.
What I tried to do, I think I was effective in it, but you can tell me. I tried to lay out to you how we will be funding that $500 million within our existing capital program, and that it will not touch state of good repair work or anything like that.
I guess I feel like just an email is not, I mean, I would feel like for this subcommittee and this board, we would want a little more of a detailed presentation on paper explaining, you know, some itemization of the $500 million, what it's going to be going for, and how you're rearranging the capital plan to pay for it.
And
I don't know that seems, my colleagues can tell me if I'm wrong, that seems not an unusual piece of information to want to have.
And certainly, many of us would like to know, is this going to mean a hit to the contribution to mass transit that Bridges and Tunnels always makes?
Look, Bob Foran talked about that at Finance when he presented the July plan. There may be some revenue loss. We realize that. We are hopeful that the enforcement mechanisms that are being put in place will help us with that.
But that's a hope at this point.
The DMV ability to suspend registrations is new, was only introduced earlier this year. So we are hopeful that that will have an effect. From the governor's presentation, he also talked about increasing enforcement at the facilities, so there'll be more of a police presence there, which we believe will help, catch scofflaws over time.
That's New York State DMV you're talking about, but what about an agreement with neighboring states?
And in terms of the other issue that was raised in terms of out-of-state agreements, that is a legislative issue that the state has taken up, and they are working towards getting that done.
Allow me to add just one other thing on the enforcement front. We currently have the power to exclude vehicles that violate our regulations. We are, within the next 6 months or so, we will be issuing exclusion orders to out-of-state violators, so that if they violate the exclusion order by crossing our facility, the same license plate readers that identify folks whose registrations have been suspended will identify vehicles violating the exclusion order, and then we can issue them a summons that is returnable in traffic court violations court, just the way the registration summonses
Margaret, there was a story maybe a year ago or 9 months ago about a trucker who frequently put coverings over their real license plates and put a fake license plate there, and I'm wondering, do you know the level of sophistication of these readers? Can they tell a fake from a real plate? It was a Port Authority crossing, but you don't have to be a genius to figure out that truckers might do that on ours once commercial traffic is allowed.
And that's another area of law enforcement. I mean, doing so is a violation of existing vehicle and traffic law, so vehicles who get stopped doing that would be subject to the same summons, returnable in Traffic Violation Bureau.
Can I just go back down to what you said? Because if I heard you correctly, I think you just said something which contradicted something I heard earlier, which is, I don't know, I forgot, one of my colleagues here asked about it, I think it was Andrew, a potential revenue impact on contributions to transit. And you said, well, it's possible there could be one. But I thought we had said earlier that we were confident that this system would generate more revenue. So
the point I made was that we were told when the Henry Hudson started that there would be in the beginning a decline, but that it would, in relatively short order, be a positive effect. Which is exactly what happened. As I recall it specifically, the community board on which I serve has the Henry Hudson Bridge within its boundaries. That board focused extensively on this. And the board had a concern as to whether or not this was going to be a positive or a negative. I bothered Jim Ferrara to get that information down. He said, you've got to give the process a chance for people to understand the system. They do. They have for a little while now. It hasn't been in effect all too many years, but they clearly understand it, and it is profit-making now.
I'm not doubting it on the Henry Hudson. I just heard something which obviously is of concern to me if this is going to have some impact on the revenue for other parts of this system, potentially the subway system. Maybe I misunderstood you, but that's what I thought you were saying.
I can't sit here and tell you what it's going to look like, 2 years from now, a year from now. What I can say is that the enforcement mechanisms that are now in place at the Henry Hudson are being strengthened. For most of the time at the Henry Hudson, we did not have the ability to suspend registration. We have that now. We did not have any kind of we have not had any kind of police presence at the Henry Hudson whatsoever. That police presence will be in place at all the facilities, starting when ORT goes live at each one. In addition, the increase in the fee from $50 to $100, which we hope you'll approve today, will also, we believe, help us stay whole. With the $50 fee and the smaller toll at the Henry Hudson, we've remained whole. We're hopeful with the $100 fee, with the larger toll at the larger facilities, that will do the same thing. So if we get the same type of payment rate, similar payment rate at the larger facility with the $100 fee, we're hopeful that will mitigate the revenue loss.
You have state police vehicles there now.
They've started
They've been
there
there
now. They have.
About 2-3 weeks already.
Right, there will be more
So you're going to permanently have state police vehicles at all the crossings that aren't there
The
now?
NYPD can't do it, then maybe
Well, the NYPD can't go on MTA facilities. I mean, that's how it works. So they wouldn't be enforcing at your facilities, but that, just as you don't
They catch
enforce.
them when they come off. Onto
But
your
they don't catch toll evasion. That's not what the NYPD does. You all are handling the enforcement for that.
All right.
Why is the timeline so expedited, particularly when there's a significant cost to expediting it? So aside from the fact that this is a governor priority, is there any negative impact to delaying, or I shouldn't say delaying, postponing this until we get the information that the commissioners have been asking for, perhaps another board meeting or another series of committee meetings? Why must this be advanced today?
Well, what we're asking for today is for approval of TransCore, which is a system integration work for the toll system at all the facilities. So they will be starting, we will provide you with a schedule for each facility, but as I said, the first ones that will go live are the 2 tunnels. So those are what they will be focusing on over the next couple of months. They've started focusing already, and they'll continue that until it goes live in January. The other facilities are further down the road in 2017. We're not asking for authorization of any contracts for those facilities today. So you'll have another opportunity to look at those that construction contracts, which will also be change orders similar to the ones we have before you today, and have another opportunity to comment or ask questions. And we will certainly have the kind of information you're asking for, hopefully at the well before you see those change orders.
But I do have to say, the second declaration does authorize the president of the authority or his designee to take such steps as may be necessary or desirable to implement the changes. I mean, it gives you a pretty blanket authority.
The steps that are necessary that I make sure I comply with the MTA regulations and bring things to the board that need to be brought to the board.
That's the same language I formulated to give him the authority to close on 347, and he hasn't done it yet.
I don't really think that's much of it. It's not really an analogous situation.
It doesn't give me the authority to act without the board's approval.
Well, bringing it back to something actionable, I wonder if even this might be, although it's unorthodox, it certainly is my impression that it is problematic if we don't pass these resolutions today for wheels that are already in motion. And speaking for myself, I'm not looking to be an impediment to the progress of the MTA nor to this initiative. I wonder if it's fair to ask the B&T staff to arrange as quickly as possible, whether it's by briefing or some other format, another level of information. And I suppose as committees and a full board, we always have the opportunity to come. This isn't going to get done, and these contracts aren't going to be signed by the next board meeting. If there was something horrific in there, we do have a means of putting the brakes on it. At the same time, I'm assuming it's really going to trip you up if you don't get these, if these aren't passed today, operationally.
We really like to get these contracts passed today.
Okay.
I can tell you that.
No, if you don't pass it to go to the board can't act.
I apologize. You're right.
What I was trying to make earlier was, if we approve it, I would hope you could get the data in form to each member of the committee and, if appropriate, to each member of the board within, hopefully today and no later than tomorrow morning. And then if there are still issues in your mind, we can deal with it again Friday, but give the board a chance.
I would like to talk to my colleagues at headquarters about the level of detail that that we're all comfortable providing when all these numbers are not totally finalized. But we can certainly give you more detail than we have, but right now we're in the midst of, as I said, developing our plan amendment So there's information going back and forth between us and headquarters staff. So that's really my...
But I guess you're not comfortable providing us numbers, but we're supposed to be comfortable voting on them.
Very comfortable providing you with the 500 million, as I said, which is, our estimate for what this will cost. I'm very comfortable with that.
We passed today an extension in the immediately preceding meeting of a contract that was made in 2000, I recall it, 5, with a blanket number that may be there, may not. We do it with MTA construction at every meeting. If we have a number that is the current number, in order for them to exceed it, they'd have to come back. Not unusual, happens all the time.
The other aspect that is being, each of the individual contracts for the implementation of this program have to come back to this board. And so this board will have a number of opportunities to approve or disapprove, and it's fiduciary responsibility, individual contracts for individual segments of this implementation. This resolution today does not in any way, while it may bind us to, we'd like to get to some point, but it does not bind us to any individual contractor or any individual contract at any of the facilities until such time as those contracts come back to us individually.
Well, at the two tunnels, that's not, the two tunnels...
The two tunnels may be a different issue,
right,
but the other bridges
is... Right, that's correct.
Right, all of those have to come back, and the only reason the two tunnels issue is because there are already existing contracts to do some of this work anyway.
That's right. And we'll be using the same mechanism for other facilities, but we're not ready yet to bring them to the board.
Right. So at least from I can only say from my perspective, obviously, this is a process, while it may be convoluted, the end result is something I strongly support and have done on this board for many years. It is a tremendous benefit to the motorists who use these facilities, to which we also have a fiduciary responsibility. We don't just have a fiduciary responsibility for the subway and rail riders. We also have a fiduciary responsibility to the automobile riders. We may not like it, but we do in that regard, and we should make their trip as easy as possible. This will accommodate that. It will also accommodate it in the context of hopefully paying for it in other ways other than reducing the contribution to mass transit. I think that is our goal to the extent we can. One also has to remember, we do not suspend licenses or registrations. DMV does, okay? And notwithstanding our belief, if the governor has made this a cause célèbre, which he has, and rightly so, my assumption is the Commissioner of the Department of Motor Vehicles got the same word, which is you better get out there and make sure that we have that MTA has the authority to tell us, DMV, we want this person's license or registration suspended, regardless of whether they're from New York or Montana, and you better make sure it happens. So I have no doubt that edict has gotten to the Commissioner of Motor Vehicles, that whatever legislative authority needs to be done, we will see how that works its way out, because this is a package of things of which this is only one step, and I would urge our committee members to move this to the board for Friday. Hopefully we will have some additional information as the request of the chairman by then, and then we can act on all of these things as they go forward.
Do I have a motion? I do, right?
I would move the second resolution.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Negative? Abstention?
Abstain.
Motion carried.
Okay. The last item is
one more, right?
We'll increase the fee from 50 to 100.
The third action item is we're asking the committee to recommend that the board authorizes us to begin the legal process to revise our toll violation enforcement regulations. The staff summary and resolution were sent to the commissioners this week and are in the book at page 79. Specifically, the revised regulations would raise the violation fee to $100 at the Bronx Whitestone, Robert F. Kennedy, Throgs Neck, and Verrazano Narrows bridges, and the Queens Midtown and Hugh L. Carey tunnels, while continuing to impose a $50 fee for toll violations at the Henry Hudson, Cross Bay, and Marine Parkway bridges. The revised regulations would also add procedural protections for alleged toll violators, which were first presented to the committee and adopted by the board in December of 2015. We did not complete the regulatory process because we realized we also needed to raise the violation fees for the purpose of protecting revenue at the major facilities with higher tolls and significant truck traffic. We ask that you recommend the adoption of this resolution.
I'm happy to move it.
Second. I just wanted to add one. In my perspective, we should add a 0 to the number, but that's because, you know, we're sending a signal to the motorists who want to do something in violation of the rules that if you're going to do that, you're going to pay for it, and you're going to pay for it handsomely. I would have gone beyond $100, but I have no doubt that that $100 number, if we find it is not sufficient,
Correct.
This board can, at any moment in time it wants to, change that number to what I would consider to be a more appropriate response. Obviously, $100 is better than $50, which we all agree is much not efficient enough to make it happen.
Is it per incident?
Yes.
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 And so recidivists don't get a really much larger one after so many?
No, it's per toll violation.
Yeah, per toll violation. So as I said, notwithstanding my belief that the number should be higher, I think this is a very important first step, but I would reserve the right, and I think others may reserve the right, to review this number after an appropriate period of time, after we see what the impact will be.
We will be monitoring actual behavior. The entire point of the fee is not to collect the money, but to cause people to pay their tolls.
That's correct. That's correct.
Can you explain the language in the resolution with regards to the appropriate part of the New York Codes, rules, and regs being repealed by this resolution?
It's a technical matter. We have existing toll violation regulations, and it's as if we would have to go through with track changes to let people know what we're revising. And we do this every time we change our toll schedule. We repeal the old toll schedule and replace it with a new toll schedule simply for ease of people to understand what it is that we're doing. The old toll schedule essentially imposes a $50 violation fee for every violation, and then defines what a violation is in terms of what you have. If you have to have a valid Easy Pass tag of the correct class, properly mounted in your vehicle, and that for fare media other than Easy Pass, you essentially have to pay your toll in the time, place, and manner we tell you to. Right now, it's in most of our facilities, it's cash, so you pay cash in the cash lane. At the Henry Hudson, you pay your toll bill within 30 days, as it says in the toll bill itself.
So this works, of course, complementary with the DMV rule.
Yes, the DMV rule went into effect January 20th of this year, and in April of this year, we began actually sending registration suspension packages to the DMV, and by the end of the year or early next year, we hope to have that process automated, so we'll be increasing the number of scofflaw violations that we send up to the DMV for suspension.
And a follow-up question, please. Will there be a warning period? I don't see anything in this language about the increase in fines.
The warning period is that it takes the SAPA process. We impose the notice, we file the notice of proposed rulemaking. It takes 2 weeks to be published in the state register. You have a 45-day comment period. The board cannot act until the comment period has been completed, so that we don't expect the board to be able to act on this until the end of January at its January board. And then it would not go into effect again until it's published in the state register. So it will not go into effect for, 4 or 5 months. And the increased fee only applies at the major facilities, so it can't go into effect until we have open road tolling at the tunnels, which we're expecting sometime in January of next year.
I mean more for the violators. So someone goes through, they get the 50, they're used, well, I shouldn't say used to, but let's say they've gotten a $50 fine already, right? So that comes in the mail, and then let's say on such date, this fine will increase to $100.
Oh, their fines will never increase. If you incurred a $50 fine, see, right now, the Henry Hudson are the only violators who are getting notices of violation. The Henry Hudson $50 violation fee will not change. So that it will stay $50. The first violators at say, the Queens Midtown Tunnel, they'll get a notice of violation imposing a $100 fee.
Yeah.
Can you remind me, Margaret, what is the penalty from DMV for suspension? There's a lot of may-haves, and what is actually the carrot and the stick to the driver, please?
We send the registration suspension package to DMV. DMV notifies the owner.
Back up. I'm confused. I don't pay it once. I don't pay it twice. When does that package?
Oh, okay. You want to go?
Yeah.
The DMV's regulation, which went into effect in January, identifies a scofflaw or habitual violator eligible for suspension as 5 or more violations on separate days within the last 18 months. As a practical matter, it's since January 19th of 2016.
So even if I pay my fine, I get an X for that trip, or if I pay the fine, I don't have an X?
Only unpaid.
Fine.
So I think we also need to make sure, obviously, we want to put appropriate signage up at the facilities beyond the Henry Hudson as we get to that point, so that those people who are coming will understand that, this agency and others take this very seriously, and here's what the penalties are going to be if you don't pay. I have found, once we put up the signs that indicated to people that when you pay your Easy Pass, you get a significant discount, it's amazing how many people now realize you get a significant discount. Somebody actually read the signs, which we never put up before. So obviously, we will encourage adherence by ensuring that people understand that if they don't pay, here are the penalties inherent in doing so at the beginning, so that they hopefully will not take action that we would not want them to take in that regard.
If one doesn't use an Easy Pass and one has their license plate read, do you know how long it takes for them to receive a bill?
Bills go out after 30 days. If it's one, if you're making multiple trips, I don't remember exactly how many. If there's multiple trips within, prior to the 30 days, we'll send the bill out, but most people get a bill after 30 days.
And how long, you're supposed to pay it within 30 days?
Yeah, within 30
then?
days to pay, yes.
And you receive subsequent bills if you don't, I assume, and at some point you'll get something that says your license will be suspended?
You get a second bill with a $5 late fee if you don't pay the first time, and then you get a third bill with the violation fee after 90 days.
And after how many months would DMV suspend their license?
Well, it depends how many. It's 5 and 18 months, so whenever they hit the 5th, could be some, within the 18 months.
Yeah, last point on this. So one of the things the private sector does often is testing, and typically that happens well when you have multiple other things. So a newspaper company that has 20 newspapers, you can try different pricing at each different one to see what happens. I wonder if, I'm not just suggesting I know the answer is, but to the unknown question that Mitch is raising, which says, should it be 100, should it be 200, should it be 300, knowing that a higher number brings more revenue, but fewer people would pay it, because the scarier that penalty becomes, people may not pay it. So it may be interesting to, over time, test, let's say, 4 like bridges, e.g. Throgs Neck, Whitestone. Sort of similar, looks the same, goes to the same places, same directions, etc. You may say to yourself, why don't we make one 100 and one 150, even though you may have a bit of a messaging challenge, but this is really for the scofflaws to begin with, or at least those who are not paying. So we may have an opportunity to test our way into what are more significant sticks.
You have different users of those crossings. I'm not sure it would be a scientific experiment.
That's a good point. You don't 100% use one versus the other, but you may have more paths to consider. So I just wanted to put that in. These are obviously very minor points relative to the larger issues raised to the left.
I mean, to use Neil's example, the Eagle team, which inspects the select buses for fare payment, and New Jersey Transit, who does the route periodic inspections of Hudsonburg and Light Rail, have a pretty hefty fine if you didn't pay your fare. And I think that works.
Either by federal statute or compact, a requirement that if a person has a license in Montana, he is therefore automatically entitled to drive in New York? Do you know?
Commissioner, I do not know the answer to that. We will take a look.
I know, he is.
Pardon me?
He is. We are one country. You are allowed to drive in any state. We cannot stop you at the border.
No, the question is whether you can maintain, since you have violated New York law, you can drive anywhere you want, but not in New York. But maybe that has to be examined in another context.
And states have compacts about mutually agreeing to allow the fining of each other's toll evaders or criminals in another regard.
Right.
We would need
right.
to do that.
Can we have a vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary-minded? It's done.
Thank you.
Now that it's done, I want to ask you one thing. I see that gantry on the Henry Hudson Bridge. It is twice as large as it needs to be. It is a monster, and I sincerely hope you don't copy it onto the other bridges.
The gantries will be very different at the other facilities.
Good. All right, the next item is procurements.
Procurements start on page 79. There are no non-competitive procurements or ratifications. There are 5 competitive procurements, 4 of which are procurement modifications to existing contracts, which address open road tolling. Specifically, 2 are modifications to public work contracts, one at the Queens Midtown Tunnel with Judd Law, and one at the U-Cary Tunnel with Tully. These modifications add funding to both contracts in 3 areas: accelerating the current substantial completion dates by 9 months each, tunnel wall tile modifications to meet New York State branding guidelines, and for all civil work associated with the rapid installation of open road tolling systems. These 2 amendments total approximately $62,552,000. The other 2 are modifications to personal service contracts. One adds funding to Transcore to develop, implement, and maintain open road tolling systems at the 8 remaining bridge and tunnel toll facilities, in addition to the Henry Hudson Bridge. This is in the amount of $72,806,258. The other modification is for the consultant HNTB to add services to provide program management, support, and expert technical oversight of the overall implementation of ORT at all 8 remaining TBTA facilities, in the negotiated amount of $6,108,533. Together, these 2 modifications total approximately $78,915,000. There is also 1 competitive procurement for award, a personal service contract for design services for miscellaneous structural repairs and the replacement of the overcoat painting system at the Henry Hudson Bridge. That's in the negotiated amount of $1,374,563. And these procurements are described in detail in the enclosed staff summaries.
What is an overcoat system?
Overcoat is one of those
I know some
periodic
people wear in this weather, but
it's when you don't blast off the 3 layers of paint to base metal. You just do localized repairs where you have rusting, and then you sort of roughen the intermediate layer, and you apply an overcoat layer to make everything uniform.
Questions, anyone?
Based on the original conversations, can you give us some idea of what TransCore is going to do? Because the language is a little generic in that regard, and obviously, this is costing us more than $72 million. So what do we get for the first $72 million?
Well, originally they designed and implemented this system at the Henry Hudson Bridge via competitive, they want to be a competitive proposal.
Right.
We're adding the rest of the facilities, and they are doing the same thing at each facility.
Doing what at each facility? Engineering the gantries? Or actually doing the gantry? That's my question. Up to what point are they getting for $72 million?
All right.
TransCore is what we call the integrator. There's three parts to EasyPass. There's the technology, there's the integration, and there's the back office. TransCore will actually do the integration, which is they take the read from the technology, send it to the customer service center for processing. So they will buy all the equipment that will be in the lane, test that equipment, design it so it can integrate into our current toll environment. That's what TransCore would do. The cost incurred includes testing, it includes equipment, it includes design services for designing the system.
At each of the 8 facilities?
That is correct.
Okay, but it does not include the structures themselves or putting up the equipment?
That is correct.
Well, it includes putting up the equipment, but not putting up the gantry.
Right.
But doesn't the equipment go on the gantry?
Yeah, and TransCore will be putting the equipment on the gantry once the gantry
Right, but they can't put the equipment on the gantry until there's a gantry.
That's correct.
And we're not buying a gantry today.
That is correct. We're not. No, the $72 million doesn't include the cost.
That's my point.
No, you are buying a gantry with the change orders to the tunnel contract.
No, I'm not, leave the tunnels out of the equation for the moment. At the other 6 facilities, we are not yet buying the gantry. TransCore is engineering the facility, but there will be another contract at some point to purchase the gantries and have somebody put them up.
But we are purchasing equipment. This procurement purchases equipment to put on the gantries.
That is correct.
So like, if you didn't then get the gantries, this would be very dumb purchase to make. So it's a little bit of a foregone conclusion that the gantry contract must follow.
Right.
So if we're, to my comment earlier about why this needs to be expedited now, and Mr. Spiro, you said for the 2 tunnels that it was important that those advance today in particular. Why are we voting on this entire package for the 8 facilities at this point? Is it possible to just vote on the costs associated with the 2 tunnels and then provide additional information to this committee and then the board for the remaining 6 facilities if that is not as eminently important as the tunnels?
You're only voting for the equipment purchase and integration that Lynn just described for TransCore, but will be other contracts coming forward for the civil work and the gantries that will be installed at each of the other facilities. So there'll be more change orders coming down the road for other engineering work at each crossing.
But once the board votes on this $73 million for TransCore, we've already started to purchase the equipment for the other 6 facilities. So, again, as I just said, it's sort of then a foregone conclusion. If you take this step, you're going to need to take the others, or else I don't know what portion of the $73 million is for the 6 other facilities.
Lynn, do you know if it's all purchased all at once, or, I mean, we could...
I'm not suggesting breaking it up. I'm just, for point of information, I'm just saying, like, if whatever 50 million of it or 60 million of it is for equipment that's going on gantries, then we kind of have to buy the gantries, or else we're just wasted $50 million.
Well, the way we have planned this project is such that basically there is a per cost per facility. Now, because of the schedule and the way we want to do things and allow the B&T certain flexibility. The equipment accounts for, I think, like 30% probably of the contract value. You will be buying equipment in it. You will be buying equipment in advance, yes. That is one thing the villain would like to do. He would like to purchase the equipment so we can have the flexibility of moving facilities up and things of that nature. So that there's some truth to that. There is a way we can stage it where we only buy the equipment for that particular facility. What that does, it affects your ability to be flexible in your scheduling of your facilities. So there's ways you can do it where you can purchase equipment just per facilities, but it does hamper your ability to have some flexibility and expedite your schedule.
The purpose of my comment some time ago in this conversation was to try and find the art of the possible of getting this done, knowing that this is happening very rapidly, and you heard the comments earlier from Jamie and Veronica, etc. And I think the notion that inside this TransCore agreement are a bunch of things. You've got, and design build is clearly something we've been trying to do more of, but you've got design, which is advisory. You've got literal CapEx being put into this, which is equipment, and it's all mushed together and we can't tell what it is for 8 different facilities. It would be helpful in the spirit that we just voted on doing this, but the practical issue, which is this group seems to not, including myself, know exactly how it's going to be spent and where the number comes from. And frankly, the $500 million number you're banning about, I don't actually know what that means. I don't know what's in that. I don't know if that's a capital number. I don't know if that's an OPEX number. I don't know if it's a revenue loss. And I don't actually understand what that is. And you don't have to answer that now, Don, because you saying a couple of things now is not going to make me any more knowledgeable what that is. I'd love to figure a way to find the art of the possible to give you the flexibility to continue moving forward while at the same time allowing this committee and then the board in more writ large to understand exactly what we're approving over when. So I don't know how to solve that problem right now.
A broad contract that includes multiple pieces without executing on all of it, though there be the authority to do so. Again, back to 347, we did exactly that in order to provide. Now, when you buy at a certain level, as you know better than I do, you're going to get a quantity discount. You're going to make out better doing it. Now, one of the appropriate questions, if your issue is not addressed between now and Friday, is to say, will you agree not to spend on the other portions until we have resolved it?
I would go so far as to define that potentially, which is I would be fine, given that we approved minutes ago, at least as a committee, to move forward the notion of doing ORT. So clearly, to do it, you got to design it. To your point, sir, I didn't catch your name, that we already have designed it one place, so we're just actually taking that same concept and moving it to 8 other facilities. I'm comfortable talking about the design portion of the $73 million. I'm not sure I'm ready to, and feel comfortable yet paying for the capital.
Then you ask for the commitment on Friday.
I would like to move forward in a way that captures my skepticism about the urgency and the need for the 6 other facilities. I'm not convinced that those have to be expedited at the cost that they're being proposed to be expedited. The case has been made for the tunnels, the 2 tunnels today by Mr. Spiro and staff, somewhat, but I'm not yet convinced. So if what you're suggesting, Mr. Chair, is splitting it, if that's my understanding.
My statement is as follows. You pass the whole thing. If this is something that takes time to get done anyway, the idea was to get the remaining pieces that raise questions in your mind to be addressed as promptly as possible. Time is not a positive factor in terms of getting this work done. The governor is entirely correct that we've been sitting on the dime throughout this city and state for too damn long, and he wants to move it. So the point is, if we put it together as a package now, and you believe that you need another 2 weeks or whatever to get your numbers straight out, just ask not to have that portion spent until we get that resolved. Simple. On the motion, all
Them to go to finance and then to the board, and we'll discuss this on Friday at the board meeting.
those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Abstention? 1. Done. We have a procurement, another procurement. Judlow.
We just voted on all the procurements, but...
It was? Is there anything else?
I think that's it.
On the motion to adjourn, all those in favor? Contrary minded? Done.